Good morning. Are you listening?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, of course.
Very good. I'd like to say a warm welcome to all participants of today's online event on Portugal's priorities for the presidency of the Council. I'm very happy that we have with us the permanent representative of Portugal to the European Union, Ambassador Nuno Brito. And as you all know, in less than 4 weeks, Portugal will assume the Council presidency. It's the fourth time that Portugal will be assuming the presidency since the country joined in 1986. So there is a lot of experience already. But as we all know, this is going to be a very special presidency. It will be the third Council presidency in times of COVID-19, with the immense challenges which we're all facing, the economic, the social, obviously the health challenges, but also the societal and the geoeconomic and geopolitical challenges linked to the crisis. The particular significance of this upcoming presidency in special times and the strong interest in it is also manifested by the fact that more than 500 people have registered for today's event. Now, we have always high numbers at our presidency briefings, but today's number is particularly high. And that does not only show the strong interest, but I think also the high expectations with respect to the Portuguese Council presidency. Now, given where we are, we do not know which key files Portugal will inherit from the German Council presidency. Next week, we have another important European Council meeting. In the words of Prime Minister Costa, the coming month will be decisive with respect to reaching a final agreement on the MFF, on the recovery package, with respect to the negotiations about the future of EU-UK relations, but also with respect to finding an agreement on the Conference on the Future of Europe, which Prime Minister Costa mentioned explicitly yesterday after the meeting with the European Parliament. But even if it's not clear what Portugal will inherit from the German Council presidency, Portugal has its own priorities for the presidency, obviously, and yesterday the Prime Minister mentioned 3 of these priorities explicitly. One was with respect to the economic recovery, where next year will be the time to come up with national recovery and resilience plans to start the recovery and resilience facility. The second issue he mentioned was the strengthening and development of Europe's social pillar, especially in light of the green and the digital transition, and the need, third, to enhance Europe's strategic autonomy while being open to the world. And he was referring to relations with Africa, the Indo-Pacific, India, transatlantic relations, but also South America. But there are many more issues on the agenda. And as I said, I'm very happy that we have with us Ambassador Brito, who will provide us with an overview of the presidency priorities. Just to inform you about the orchestration of today's event, we've agreed that the ambassador will present the priorities. That will take him around 15 to 20 minutes. Then I will engage him in a short exchange. And then the second half of our today's event will be opening the floor to all of you for questions and answers. And there are 2 ways for you to engage in this. One is you can write a written question. You can see that on the right side of your screen. Enter your question. Please be brief, as probably a tweet length would be good, so that I will be able to monitor your questions and then to hand them over, to group them and to hand them over to the ambassador. And the second option is that you raise your hand, that you click on the hand-shaped button, again, small, but still there on the right-hand side of your screen, so that we can give you the floor to raise a question orally. But if you then do so, please also think of the fact that you need to unmute yourself. So that was a long introduction for us to get started. So thank you again, Mr. Ambassador, for being with us, and the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much, Yanis, for your kind words of introduction. And let me also thank the European Policy Center for this kind invitation. This is going to be an online policy briefing, and I hope that in the future we can have more presential policy briefings, but that's what it is. Before I share with you what will be the main pillars of our presidency program, a few introductory remarks. And a spoiler alert. COVID will still leave a strong mark on the European Union's agenda during the first semester of 2021, as you yourself recognized. Indeed, COVID has forced us all to prioritize the European response to the triple health, economic and social crisis as becoming an overarching priority in itself. What does that mean for our presidency? I would mention three main themes. First, the economic response to the crisis, bringing to a close all remaining negotiations related to the multi-annual financial framework and next generation EU. I hope in January we will already be in an implementing phase. Second, the social response to the crisis. The social impact of the pandemic has made our original priority of strengthening the European social pillar even more urgent. More on this later. Third, the health policy response to the crisis. While health policy is mainly a national competence, expectations among our citizens concerning the rollout of the vaccine are high, growing, and also direct at quote-unquote Europe. The Commission has done excellent work so far. Our presidency will have to deal with the challenges of coordination within the Council. Fingers crossed, the first semester of next year could lead to the beginning of a certain normalization of the European Union's agenda and working methods. Hopefully, after our presidency, the European Union can start leaving this crisis behind. Speaking of working methods, at the very least in the first half of our presidency, our work will continue to be challenged by the logistical impact of the crisis. Don't underestimate the negative impact of the VTCs on the productivity of the Brussels machine. Perhaps our presidency will herald a gradual return to normal meetings. I cross my fingers again. But COVID is not the only source of unpredictability for our presidency for the 1st of January onwards. There are three questions that we could ask ourselves. First, will we soon clinch a deal on MFF and the next generation EU? Second, will there be an agreement on the future relationship with the United Kingdom? Third, how much positive potential will the new Biden administration hold for the European Union-United States relations across the board? Developments in any of these issues will leave a strong imprint on our presidency. But taken together, they make it clear that the next semester will be very interesting indeed. On the pillars of the presidency program, it will focus on a resilient Europe, a social Europe, a green Europe, a digital Europe, a global Europe. Well, you may say these are only slogans, and of course you are right. So what do they mean for our presidency? Starting with a resilient Europe. We look at resilience from three main angles. First, the economic crisis response and cohesion. We will focus on the rollout of the next MFF and next generation EU, specifically on the smooth approval of the national recovery plans, and you mentioned them beginning of your presentation, because this is the basis for sustainable growth, job creation, and convergence in the European Union for the foreseeable future. Europe can only work towards an open strategic autonomy if it has the basic financial tools to respond to the current crisis and recover economically. Second, we will contribute to strengthening the European Union crisis management system for greater resilience and coordination in disaster response. This includes strengthening the capacity for surveillance and response to infectious diseases, and exploring what more can be done at the European Union level on health policy, based on the lessons learned with COVID. Third, the European Union's resilience is also anchored in upholding its fundamental values. I put them in third place, but I could easily place this point at the top of the agenda. Promoting the rule of law, democratic values, and media pluralism, as well as fighting against all forms of discrimination and disinformation, will be core priorities. And speaking of fundamental values, free movement is a core promise of the European project, and we will work towards the normalization of the function of the Schengen area. A word also on migration and asylum. This is a challenging debate, which has been with us for years and will be with us for the foreseeable future. We will build on the work of the German presidency and aim for gradual incremental progress on the new pact on asylum and migration proposed by the Commission, which needs to be discussed in detail for starters at expert level. A second point is moving on to a social Europe. As soon as we start planning for our presidency, well before COVID struck, it was clear that promoting the European social model through the reinforcement of the European Pillar of Social Rights was going to be one of our priorities. The twin green and digital transitions are fundamental for Europe to be both sustainable and economically competitive. While we are among those defending ambitious targets and policies in these areas, we also want to make sure that moving forward, no one is left behind, and that the European Union can make a contribution to a solid social framework for its citizens. I would say that the pandemic has only made this more relevant, urgent even. The treaties tell us that Europe's economic foundations are based on a social market economy. We have to act accordingly, mainly in response to the economic crisis generated by this pandemic. This is why the flagship event we are planning for our presidency is a social summit in May, hopefully in the city of Porto, COVID permitting, of course. It will be focused on employment and jobs, equal opportunities, inclusion and diversity, social protection and health, and have two separate but complementary components. One, the first one, a high-level conference with broad participation, including social partners. And the second, an informal European Council. On this, we have been working closely both with the European Commission and the President of the European Council. As for Green Europe, we want the European Union to remain a global leader in climate action, namely by promoting the competitive advantages of a climate-neutral and resilient economic model. To this end, our presidency will take the next steps on European climate law, and I underline the sentence, the next steps, and organize a high-level conference on climate change. In the light of the growing impact of climate change across the European Union and the discussions within the international context, we will attach particular importance to the adaptation strategy. We cannot only look at mitigation. We also have to look at problems member states are already facing, such as droughts, forest fires, and desertification, among others. Finally, the implementation of the European Green Deal will be a cross-cutting priority and will contribute to the building blocks needed to turn Europe into the first climate-neutral continent by 2050. The first pillar is Digital Europe. Digital transition is a strong driver of sustainable economic recovery and a unique opportunity to strengthen the single market sustained by the green transition. To foster the competitiveness and attractiveness of the digital single market and to promote a level playing field for all businesses, especially SMEs and startups, our presidency will give top priority to the digital services package to be presented by the Commission. We will pay particular attention to the importance of international connectivity in the framework of the European Digital Strategy and Europe's digital autonomy. Our presidency will coincide with the inauguration of the ELA Link cable, BELA project, linking the European Union, Africa, and Latin America. Finally, a word on global Europe. On January 1st, the United Kingdom will no longer be in a transitional phase vis-à-vis the European Union. Whatever the outcome of the ongoing negotiations, the European Union's future relationship with that country is going to be an important priority for all of us. As presidency, we will aim for a relationship that is as close as possible. Simply put, the United Kingdom will not just be another partner for the European Union. We continue to believe that the Brits and us share values and many interests. We need to, as soon as possible, move to building a joint framework. Moving towards a different part of the globe, there is a growing awareness in the European Union of the importance of the Indo-Pacific region and its potential for Europe, both economically and geopolitically. In this context, India is the largest democracy in the world, a growing economic partner for Europe, and a country which we feel needs to move to the top of the European Union's global agenda. This is why we are planning to host a meeting of European Union leaders with Prime Minister Modi in May. We wanted to give a new impetus to this relationship, which can help us scale up our global efforts on climate, digital, and trade. We believe that between the European Union and India, over time, we can develop a win-win situation. As I said before, we are looking forward to the prospect of a vibrant transatlantic relationship with the United States. As presidency, we will contribute, together with the other relevant institutions, to all of the European Union reflection that needs to take place in order to present a coherent proposal for cooperation to the new administration. And in our opinion, bringing the European Union and NATO closer is also a task worth exploring. Moving to Africa, this is a traditional and cross-cutting priority for us Europeans. We have to build a positive agenda for our relationship with Africa, ranging from development, trade and migration to the post-Cotonou framework. We hope conditions will be ripe for a full-scale EU-Africa summit in Brussels during 2021, as soon as possible. And there is no global Europe without trade and the development of the European Union's trading relations. We will strive to ensure that the European Union's trade agenda moves forward, keep existing commitments of the European Union, while also taking into account the need to ensure high environmental standards. We look forward to the upcoming Commission's communication on trade policy. Last but not least, let me say a word about the conference on the future of Europe, because Europe does have a bright future. We will have to build on what may happen during the German presidency. The Council will play its part. Our aim is to bring the European Union closer to European citizens, because ultimately the Union is an ongoing project to improve the lives of our citizens. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm looking forward to the Q&A period.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you very much for introducing the priorities of the Portuguese presidency. You said when you were presenting the priorities that you felt that some of these are slogans when you were referring to the resilience Europe, social Europe, Green Europe, Digital, Global Europe. But when you then elaborated on the details, it became more than clear that there's a lot of thinking and a lot of ideas behind each and every of the 5 dimensions with respect to what you want to achieve during your presidency. But let me ask you a couple of questions, allowing also the audience to raise their questions themselves, so to break the ice. So please, to all those out there in the online world watching us, please start posing questions so that I can then convey them to Ambassador Brito. But let me start with a more of a general question related to something you said in the beginning when you were saying that obviously this is a special council presidency given the circumstances. But I have the impression, and I would like to hear your opinion on that, that actually in the COVID-19 reality we now live in, the council presidency has become more important. I think there are 2 main reasons for that. One is the magnitude of the crisis challenges, which requires decisions to be taken and also to take decisions as speedy as possible. And the council presidency obviously plays a role, especially in the interaction with the European Parliament, but not only. And the second is that the negotiations among and within institutions have become more difficult given the COVID-19 situation. And I think that that requires a stronger role of the council presidency. And I would like to hear your opinion as to whether you believe that this is true in terms of my analysis, that the role of the council presidency as part of the overall system in times of crisis is or has become maybe even more important than it was before.
Well, 2 very good questions, I have to say. But before I reply to your questions, let me stress also a very important point. Yes, we have a lot of experience in dealing with presidencies, but in a way, this is going to be our first presidency because it's the first one after the Lisbon Treaty for us. And there is a whole world that has changed after that. Having said that, yes, I mean, the role of the presidency, of the rotating presidencies, has been usually underrated after the Lisbon Treaty, but in a very unfair way, because all the presidencies have played a very important role. Let's not forget that of the formations of the Council still presided by the rotating presidencies, with or without COVID. But going straight to your points, I mean, I believe that there is a huge effort by all institutions, not only the Council, but also the Commission, the Parliament, to make sure that the machinery of the Union works. It's much more difficult, and you are right, to work under these circumstances, because nothing replaces the human contact. When we have to talk with, to negotiate something, it's much more difficult to negotiate via VTC than to negotiate in a physical way. Even the expression physical meeting sounds strange and a little bit bizarre, but we have this expression now in our European Union jargon. But yes, I mean, the Council has to be present, as the other institutions have been, because the time to reply to the COVID demands is very short in so many dimensions. And I think that all the institutions have been doing a very good job so far. Let's see if we can keep up with that good job. And we will look at our own presidency as a follow-up of this trio of presidencies that has a common program and wants to implement its program. A program that, by the way, that is aligned with the priorities which were defined by the European leaders, by the leaders' agenda. And so we have to adapt those priorities to the situation we are facing. And that's our main task. But I cannot disagree with your own assessment.
Very good. Let me ask you one other question, and then I see that our question coming in, so I will go to the questions coming from the audience. But let me ask you something with respect to social Europe, which is one of the clusters included in what you presented in terms of the presidency priorities. So strengthening the social dimension, which I think, and you said that is an important objective, especially now given the crisis experience, the crisis effects, but also the recovery from the crisis, which we're all hoping that 2021 will be the start towards that. But if you look into what has been now fleshed out with respect to what the recovery efforts at European level will focus on, you have a very strong focus on the green and the digital for good reasons. I'm not disputing that. But often it feels that the social dimension feels like an afterthought, if I want to be a bit provocative, compared to the green and the digital. And I think that this is, to put it clearly, I think this is wrong, because if you look at recovery, you actually need something which I've called a recovery triangle, where the green, the digital, and the social dimension are equal parts of that triangle. And I'm asking myself how the recovery process in the context of Next Generation EU, the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which will also be part of the next European semester, how we can make sure that actually when figuring out what national plans will be concentrating on, that will not only have a strong focus with respect to the green and the digital, again, this is needed, but that will also take into account the social dimension of recovery. And you were saying that there will be a summit devoted to social issues in May, but I would want to hear what your other thoughts are with respect to how one can strengthen the social dimension with respect to Europe's economic recovery. And then I will go over to the floor. Thank you.
Very good questions, because first of all, I agree with the way you have portrayed it, because it's really a triangle. And that's the way we have also explaining what we want to do with these three components. But if you look at we still don't know what the national plans will be. For each member state, it will have to be tailor-made according to the guidelines under which we will operate. But I'm pretty sure that all member states and all the institutions will take into consideration the facts on the ground. And the facts on the ground, from an economic point of view, are quite clear in terms of the impact of this crisis, for instance, on unemployment, for instance, it's not about on job creation, and also on the growth of our own economies. And we have to build not only on already existing instruments, but also we have been working very closely with the European Commission that will come up with ideas also, in addition to those that they have already indicated, to see if we can contribute to reassure the citizens, to show the citizens that we are actually replying to the needs, the actual needs that they feel in the different, all across Europe. The precondition for that, of course, is financing. And financing means that we have to finalize our July deal and to finalize our MFF and our next generation deal. Without that, it's going to become much more difficult to operate. But we are still negotiating, we are still working with the German presidency, fully behind the German presidency, and we expect to be able to move to these next steps that will be required. I don't want to be specific at this point about what, in addition to what I have already said in my introductory remarks, about what could be inside the basket of the social Europe, because we are still working on it. But I can assure you that what we want to do will be fully in line with what Europe has been doing for years. And by the way, there was a social summit before. It took place in Gothenburg a few years ago. So we are building on the results of that and on what we can do to improve the social pillar of the Union.
Very good. I will now go to the questions which our audience have been asking. And given that we have a good number of them, if you allow me, maybe I'll take 3 in the beginning and give them back to you so that you can ask them, respond to them as groups. The first question, thank you. The first question is related to taxation, and there's a second one related to taxation. So let me start with these. It's Totbul, I hope I pronounced his name correctly, who is asking, he's interested to know what tax initiatives the Portuguese presidency will pursue. Specifically, will it allow public country-by-country reporting to come to a vote in the council? So he's asked about tax initiative during the Portuguese presidency. And there's a second question related to taxation, and it comes from Chiara Putaturo. And she's asking again about your plans on taxation, and in particular whether the Portuguese presidency wants to advance on the digital levy as a common EU source on the financial transaction tax and on tax transparency. So these are 2 questions related to taxation. And let me take a third one, which is related to a totally different issue. It's Naufal Aoune, who's asking whether Portugal will be engaged, or says you are very engaged in global ocean protection, and whether we will see any initiatives or events related to issues related to the oceans during your presidency. So maybe if you can take these 3, and then there we have others coming.
Well, thank you very much. I see that they're impressive questions. I think it's premature to talk about tax initiatives. I mean, the big question that, well, there are a couple of big questions when we discuss the European agenda in general, even today, I mean, not only during our presidency. And there are questions linked with digital taxation, of course. As you know, this is an ongoing discussion, an ongoing debate in the European Union. Because it's linked also what we have been doing in the OECD. I mean, when we talk about digital, I think that all of us in Europe agree that it would be much more effective for everybody if we could come to an agreement within the OECD. And that was not possible for reasons which are well known. But we have not given up. We are still exploring. But ultimately, and I'm speaking, this is the opinion of my own country. I'm not talking on behalf of any presidency on this, because it's premature. But we have been of the opinion that, of course, I mean, if we cannot move together other partners within the OECD, at some point, Europe will have to move together, if possible. And so that's our national opinion. I have to underline that on this particular point, it's premature to talk about taxes. Actually, our leaders will have to discuss tax-related issues, especially when they will discuss climate change soon in the European Council. And we'll take our guidance for our presidency from the results of that discussion. So I won't elaborate further on this. On transparency in general, I mean, Portugal has been a country very favorable to measures linked with transparency, fiscal, on tax issues. And of course, I mean, there is an agenda also of the ongoing agenda that can be developed, and we'll work on it. On the oceans, well, Thank you very much for the question, because we were planning to organize in Lisbon a global summit for the oceans, and the COVID disrupted that. But it's still in our agenda. Let's see when it's feasible. We have been working closely with all relevant stakeholders, in particular the United Nations, and that's an issue that will be very much present during our presidency. We'll explore every single opportunity to further advance our agenda in that field.
Very good. Let me take the next three. Again, there's a lot of interaction online. And there is Colin Laverell, who's asking about the Portuguese presidency with respect to the revision of the EU's industrial strategy, and what the Portuguese presidency intends to do in order to contribute to that. The next question comes from Marko Radabonovic, who is a diplomat at the mission of Bosnia and Herzegovina, asking what will Portugal's relation to the enlargement policy and to Western Balkans regions will be in general. And the final question comes from Matthias Koch from the Austrian Chamber of Economics in Vienna, who is asking a question with respect to the rule of law and how you would assess the rule of law attitude of the current Hungarian and Polish governments. So these will be the next three questions on my list, and more coming.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, very interesting questions, crossing the whole spectrum. The first one will be very brief, my reply, because as you know, the Commission is working on the industrial side review, and so we'll have we'll look into their work, and we'll be working on the basis of their own proposals. I mean, in this front. One thing is clear, talking about industry, and this is a very general remark. What is clear is that Europe will be well advised if in the future we'll build more resilience from an industrial point of view. And that's a lesson learned from this crisis. And by that, I don't mean protectionism, because that's not what is at stake. What is at stake is to build resilience, which is a completely different concept. And also to adapt our industries to the agendas that we have outlined, the green and the digital, among others. On the enlargement and Western Balkans, I have to say that it's a very easy question for me, because Portugal has been one of the countries from the outset that has been in the forefront of supporting enlargement, supporting also integrating the Western Balkans into the European Union. We cannot leave a loophole at the heart of Europe in the future. Now, we have contributed over the years, not only in political terms, but also in a very practical way with troops, with the police, and with the technical assistance to this endeavor. So this is not news to us. What can we do? What can we do is going to be defined together with our partners, because unanimity is still the rule when we deal with these matters. But they are not forgotten at all. That I can assure you. And they are not forgotten in the Council. They are very much present in the Council. And I have to be fair. All member states pay very good attention to these issues. The way they look at how to implement them may differ from time to time, but the level of attention is very high in the Council. So we'll explore also the opportunities available to see if we can deepen this process. Last one was on the rule of law. And of course, I started by saying that rule of law is one of the cornerstones of the European project. My Prime Minister was very clear 2 days ago and yesterday on this particular issue. It's an issue that it's cross-cutting. I mean, without rule of law, you don't have a European Union. It's very simple because it's one of the basic pillars of our common values. So we'll deal with this issue in a constructive and practical way. And in particular, we feel that it's very important that all member states participate actively in reviewing in their own practices in terms of rule of law. As you know, an initiative was started during the German presidency, a kind of a peer review in the Council of what member states have been doing. And the 5 member states have been examined in the first year. Another 5 member states will be examined during our presidency. And so the issue will be very present for us in there. So no doubts whatsoever about it.
Very good.
And, let me just add one thing. It's very important for us because people tend to forget that Portugal had one of the longest dictatorships in Europe. It lasted for 48 years. So it's very much present in the minds of the Portuguese citizens that democracy is not something given from heaven. It's something that we have to build on a daily basis. And the rule of law is one of the main pillars of our democratic systems.
Very good. Let me take now 3 more. I will take 2 from written questions, and I will then also ask Julian Weiser from Oxfam, who has raised his hand to prepare himself to engage with us orally so that we can hear your voice. But let me start with the 2 written questions. One refers, again, by the way, to the Social Summit, what I was also referring to. And it's Joseph Serge asking whether the Social Summit will be, quote, EU-centric, or will it also have a global dimension to it? A second question relates to another issue you mentioned, EU-Mercosur, and with respect to the EU-Mercosur agreement. And the question is, will the Portuguese presidency prioritize the ratification of this agreement? And if so, how will you work to achieve this? And this comes from Anders Reinberg from the Confederation of Swedish Enterprise. And now, as a third question, let us ask Julian Weiser from Oxfam. I hope you hear it and that we can hear you.
Yes, can you hear me properly?
We can hear you very well. So please ask your question.
Thank you, Yanis, and good morning, Ambassador. I would be very happy to hear a bit what your ideas or plans are regarding respect for international law. And I was very pleased to hear as well the focus that you put on Africa and the summit, also knowing that there will be 2 strategies for the Sahel and the Horn of Africa. We hope that the expertise of Portugal will be able to push for proper approach that are also based on what communities and people affected think regarding the EU's response there. Thank you.
Okay.
So if you take these 3, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Well, on the first question, I mean, of course, I mean, the main emphasis lies on what we are doing in Europe, I mean, because it's a European summit. But whatever we do in Europe, although we don't have, I mean, I think it would be unfair to portray what we do in Europe from a Eurocentric view. We are no longer in that phase in global affairs. But Europe, I mean, the European Union, whether some like it or not, what we do has an impact in the lives of other people as well. And so when we discuss among ourselves standards, when we discuss among ourselves issues that which have to do with job creation or job security, or issues that will have to do with how we organize ourselves from a labor point of view, for instance, when we discuss those issues, I think that if we can reach to positive conclusions, these issues, one way or the other, will impact on others. Whether others will be present in this European social summit, to be quite frank with you, I don't know. It's a very good question, and I congratulate whoever asked the question, because that's an issue that I'm going to take back from this meeting to my government. So thank you very much for your question. Very interesting one. Second, on Mercosur, the presidency will not work in splendid isolation. We have to work with our partners. We have to work with the European Commission and the European Parliament in these issues. So at this phase, I mean, the Commission is still completing elements linked with the agreement that have to be worked out. What I can assure you and our Mercosur friends is that this is a very important and topical issue for us. But when I say for us, I dare to say for us, Europe, not only for Portugal. Because the fact is that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that I'm right, this is the biggest agreement that we have with another bloc, I mean, European Union, that has achieved with another bloc. It's very relevant because we are talking with a bloc which has very like-minded countries in so many issues, including on, for instance, multilateralism. But of course, I mean, it's a difficult discussion in some countries, in some member states. But I think that steadily and progressively, we can build a better climate, so to speak, politically speaking, that will enable us to move forward on approving this agreement. Are we going to be able to ratify that during our presidency? Well, I think that's very unlikely because the timelines are different and we still have work to do, some work to do and, with our partners. But we'll advance as much as possible this file during our presidency, for sure. The last question, it's about respect for international law. I'm not sure if I was able to get everything, but respect for international law and the rules-based order is what the European Union has been asking for years. As a matter of fact, if we agree about something in the Union, is that we should move in a world based on a rules-based order. We don't like to see, we wouldn't like to be in a situation in which might is right. And international law is pretty much part of it. But there was a reference to a strategy that I didn't get. So can I ask the gentleman who asked the question, if he could precise again, please, what he wanted me to say about this strategy?
Yes, could we give Julian Weiser the floor again? I hope he's...
Yes, thank you. There was a question and basically a comment. My question was exactly international law, to know a bit what are your plans in order to make sure the respect for international law in the EU's internal for foreign activities. And then I was commenting on the fact I was glad to hear your focus on Africa, especially that two strategies are going to be adopted, one on the Horn and one on Sahel, and vis-à-vis which we need strong participation of local organizations and people affected by the conflicts in those regions.
Thank you very much.
Very
that was
good.
the part that I missed here
Yes.
in this part. Well, on Africa, I mean, of course, I mean, first of all, we are going to have a meeting soon on the 9th, a high-level meeting with Africa. And we hope that this high-level meeting with Africa, that will be conducted by President Charles Michel, will be a stepping stone for us to develop other projects that the Union has to develop its own relationship with Africa. Ultimately, we would like to see another summit meeting between the African Union and the European Union at some point during 2021, whenever possible. Not because we are summit obsessed, but because we feel that it's about time with the pandemic and that has hit everybody, not only Europe, but other continents as well, to have face-to-face talks and to see what we can do to support the Africans in developing their own economies and becoming also more competitive at the global level. So it's in our common interest, and we should avoid in this. We have to listen to the African side, because it's important that they also feel that they have ownership in this process. It's not up to us to preach what we want from them. This is a dialogue, it's not a monologue. And so we need to do this together. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense. Let me also point out that not only we are going to have soon this high-level meeting, but also in the upcoming European Council, we expect to have a discussion on our Southern Partnership, because during the Portuguese presidency, by the way, we still have in our program a meeting, a high-level meeting with the Eastern Partnership countries, a very important dimension of what we do in foreign policy. But now, in December, the Southern Partnership will be under the radar of our leaders, and we'll see what we can bring from this meeting. But let me also remind everybody that this is an issue about which there is a strong agreement. I mean, to try to reinvigorate the approach, our approach to Africa, a strong agreement between the Council, the Commission, and the European Parliament. And I remember that the President of the European Commission, Mrs. von der Leyen, went with the college, the Commissaire, to Addis to meet our African partners. And that was a very important initiative. And we should build on these kind of initiatives in the future.
Very good.
Let's still have time for more questions.
Yes, very good. I'm worried of the time, so I know we're going to end on time. So let's take two written ones and one from Federico Conticello, who has raised his hand. But let's start with the written ones. The first one is on that Portugal is a member state with outermost regions. The question here is, will this topic of outermost regions be on the agenda of the presidency? And if yes, how? And the second question relates between the linkage between European health and the economy. And the question comes from Bernhard Grimm, who's asking, in view of between European health and the economy. And the question is, in view of an ambitious recovery plan for the EU, are you planning any initiative to look at sustainable growth creation through that angle, meaning the health angle? So that's a question from Bernhard Grimm. And now I'm asking Federico Conticello whether he's still here and whether we can hear him so that he can pose his question, please. Federico, are you there? Seems that we can. You need to unmute yourself, Federico. We cannot hear you if you cannot unmute yourself. Seems that there is a problem here. So let's take these two questions, please.
Thank you very much. I mean, for the first question is about the autonomous regions. We have two, the autonomous regions of Madeira and the Azores. I mean, all along those years of our membership in the European Union, we have reminded our partners that the autonomous regions exist in the treaties. They are part of the treaties. They are not something coming from, the will of a few member states. And so it's part of our agenda to see what we can do to explore ways to improve the situation of these regions. They exist the way they are recognized. They are recognized in the treaties for a reason, because they face situations which are very challenging. Just if you look at where they are geographically located, that brings, from an economic point of view, difficulties that we do not face in so-called mainland Europe at this point. And so we'll explore ways to see how to move forward in this area. On the European health and economy, it's a good question. I'm pretty sure that in the national health plans from different member states, this issue will be reflected one way or the other. Let's not forget that we have a recovery plan. We hope that we can finalize it soon. I think that it should be a top priority for all member states. That recovery plan, recovery and resilience, because the two elements are interconnected, will be there. But also, in addition to that, there is the normal MFF, and that means that member states also can develop through the MFF their own policies linked with the health sector. So whether this is going to contribute to sustainable growth creation, I would say yes. And I would say yes for another reason, and that has nothing to do in particular with our presidency. The European population is aging. And so that means that the health sector will be more needed in the future in order to ensure that the proper care of our citizens will be there in the future. So it's just a matter of, I would say, common sense. And that's going to be built, I mean, in different policies, through different ways across the board. Again, health is mainly a European national competence, but we have been cooperating much more among ourselves since this crisis started than before. And I believe that we will keep on cooperating. And the big test, I think, will be the vaccine, because the vaccine will be a key point, I believe, for the citizens of the Union. I mean, they expect from us, what do they expect? They expect that our economies will pick up again and bring the jobs that are needed and the growth and sustainable growth that is needed. But they also expect that their own security, I mean, from a health point of view, will be ensured. So we hope, with the news that are arriving from different quarters, that the vaccine will become a reality soon, and that will be a game changer for Europe, I believe.
Very good. Let me end with a final question, which links to the final point you made, which was on the Conference on the Future of Europe. And we have Mathieu Bon, who is asking whether we can assume that the conference will or will not start at the beginning of 2021. and whether the row on the leadership question with respect to the conference can be settled, whether it cannot be settled, which means it wouldn't be starting. And I would add to that, if we assume it starts before or when you also start your presidency, what will be the focus you would try to set with respect to the conference? Obviously, this is not an affair which is something which is in the responsibility of the Council presidency, but the Council is, together with the Commission, the Parliament, playing a leading role. So what would be your focus during your 6 months at the helm of the Council? So let's take that as the last question. Thank you, please.
Thank you very much. I mean, I have to tell you that we are eager to start the conference. I mean, it's very important, and we should not underestimate the value of this conference. But for that, we did first things first. I mean, the first thing that we did is an interinstitutional agreement between the European Parliament, the Commission, and the Council, and I think that it's on the works. We hope that it will be concluded still during the current presidency. If not, for some reason, we'll of course have to conclude it during our presidency. But I hope that that will be done rather sooner than later. And starting from there, we'll have to, at the three institutions, I mean, we'll have to work together. And that's very important. That each institution will be able, in its own way, and together, to frame a program that will reach to our citizens. Now I will give our perspective. Our perspective, not as a result of a mandate that we don't have. So I'm not commenting on the Portuguese presidency, because for that I would need a mandate. But our national perspective, for the time being, we want this conference to be pretty much focused, to be practical, to be pretty much focused on the needs of the citizens. There are many polls that show what are the main concerns of our citizens. We should listen to them. We should not be wasting time with debates that would not be productive. And for us, I mean, the issues like health, like growth and jobs, like digital, like the climate, for instance, and others, I mean, many others, are key issues of interest for our citizens, and we understand that. So in the end, we will, and hopefully, as it is scheduled, this exercise will be finalized during the French presidency. In the end, what would be important would be that, not that we would produce another report that would be soon forgotten and shelved, but that we would come up with ideas that we could use to improve our member states, and to improve also the lives of our citizens. That's our goal. And
thank you
also
much.
To widen as much as possible their participation. But that's a matter for another talk.
Exactly. But thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for laying out the presidency priorities. Thank you for accepting so many questions and responding to so many of them. For me, the only thing remaining is to thank you for being with us today, to wish you all the best for the 6 months of your presidency. It will be interesting, at least, but I wish you all the best. And I want to thank not also you, but I want to thank also all the participants. As I said in the beginning, there were a lot of them today with us. So thank you all for participating in today's event, and I wish you a good remaining day and all the best. So thank you again, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you so much for your invitation, and stay safe. Thank you.
Stay safe. Thank you.